Hello, everyone. My name is Patsy Wood, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Thank you. We are glad you are here with us this morning at the First Unitarian of Oakland. We are committed to becoming an intentionally multi-generational, multiracial, multicultural, inclusive, and anti-oppressive religious community. You are welcome here. If you are new, we invite you to fill out a Newcomer Connect card online. Here it is. You can use the QR code on the card in the seat backs in front of you, or the link on our website, or if you prefer, you can go to the greeters table in the front hall there, or in Vente Hall after the service. There's a table there. And Vente Hall is right through that exit door and to the right. And if you want to learn more about us, Emily Stoper, Emily? Yay, Emily. Emily is going to be, we'll be holding a 10-minute orientation for newcomers at the end of today's service so you can get your questions answered and find out more about us. Welcome, everybody. And please join us at Vente Hall for coffee hour and mingling after the service. For all those interested, Reverend Laurel and Maria from our Community Connections team are hosting a welcome circle today from 11:45 during coffee hour. They will meet at the Stark King Room instead of the third floor library. You can come by to learn more about Unitarian Universalism, our church, and ask questions about our community. Snacks and childcare will be provided. And by the way, the Stark King Room is through that door. You go past the front door, and then it's the first door on your left is Stark King Room. Okay. All right. Great news. We have received over $146,000 in pledges for our 2025 Stewardship Pledge Drive. Woohoo! Thanks to all who made this possible. So this week we will be calling folks who have not returned their pledge cards or made their pledges online. We need everyone to renew their 2024 pledge and wherever possible, increase their pledge by at least 3% to help pay for the cost of living increases for our staff. So do it today. You can use the QR code on the Get Involved cards. Yeah, here. Located in your row. Click on the church website, Building on a Strong Foundation icon on the homepage, or return the pledge card you received in person or by mail. And if you didn't get one, see me after the service. Thank you again for your support of our beloved church and congregation. And now for the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge the land and the ancestral people of this land, the Lijon Ohlone peoples. Our church institutions and homes are occupying their ancestral lands called Hushan. We acknowledge that the lands were stolen from the Ohlone peoples who have an ancestral relationship with this land, the plants, the animals, and the water for millennia, continuous to this present day. Ohlone people are still here. We also recognize that the spirits of Ohlone ancestors are present. We stand in solidarity with all Indigenous people and their right to self-determination and justice. We commit to working towards the healing of the intergenerational trauma, theft, and dispossession Native American peoples continue to face. We celebrate the joyful rematriation and restoration of ancestral lands with local Lijon Ohlone people, and we encourage you to learn more about the Confederated Villages of the Lijon Ohlone people. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to all that are here and as well to those that are joining us on Zoom this morning. My name is Nancy Henderson and I am your worship associate today. Let's join together as Reverend Laurel lights the chalice with our standard words on the screen. We light this chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism. May it remind us of the divine spark in all of creation, the power of love to heal what is broken, and to be grateful for life's blessings each day. We light our peace candle with words from Reverend Leslie Takahashi. Listen, a wisdom within you calls to a wisdom beyond you, and in that dialogue lies peace. And together we say, peace is possible. We light our Black Lives Matter candle with words from Reverend Howard Thurman. In the stillness of the quiet, if we listen, we can hear the whisper of the heart, giving strength to weakness, courage to fear, hope to despair. And together we say, Black Lives Matter. Our call to worship this morning is by Reverend Scott Taylor. Come, let us listen with new ears. Do you hear it? That voice, so familiar, yet still so far. Less a longing and more a knowing, a whisper of something inside that seems to have known us longer than we've known it. Come, let us listen together. And in one voice we say, come, let us worship together. Join us in singing our gathering song, number 1008 in the Teal hymnal, When Our Heart is in a Lonely Place. Holy place, sorry.
Kids and youth and whoever wants to hear the story down here. Do you want to come, George? Come on. can listen from there. So this morning, our story is on the theme this month, which is about listening. And so the title of the book I'm going to read to you is The Rabbit Listened. One day, Taylor decided to build something new, something special. Something amazing. Taylor was so proud. But then, out of nowhere, things came crashing down. The chicken was the first to notice. Oh, clack, clack. What a shame. I'm so sorry this happened. Let's talk about it. Clack, clack. But Taylor didn't feel like talking, so the chicken left. Next came the bear. How horrible. I bet you feel so angry. Let's shout about it. But Taylor didn't feel like shouting, so the bear left. The elephant knew just what to do. I can fix this. We just need to remember exactly the way things were. But Taylor didn't feel like remembering, so the elephant also left. One by one they came. The hyena. Let's laugh about it. The ostrich. Let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo. Tisk, tisk. What a mess. Let's throw it all away. And the snake. Let's go knock down someone else's. Taylor didn't feel like doing anything with anybody. So eventually, they all left. Until Taylor was alone. In the quiet, Taylor didn't even notice the rabbit. But it moved closer and closer, until Taylor could feel its warm body. Together they sat in silence until Taylor said, "Please stay with me." The rabbit listened. The rabbit listened as Taylor talked. The rabbit listened as Taylor shouted. The rabbit listened as Taylor remembered and laughed. The rabbit listened to Taylor's plans to hide, to throw everything away, to ruin things for someone else. Through it all, the rabbit never left. And when the time was right, the rabbit listened to Taylor's plan to build again. "I can't wait," said Taylor. It's going to be amazing. The end. So now will you join me in singing the children to their class? And the what? And the youth group too. Go now in peace, go now in peace, may the Spirit of COVID might be receding. I don't know if you feel comfortable, but have you ever made an arch and then let the kids and families go out under the arch in the middle? So we might start doing that again, and you don't have to touch the hand if you don't want, but I think that's really a sweet thing, is making a tunnel for the kids while we sing them out, going out in peace. This morning, our practice of greeting one another, as we do each week, will be a little bit different. So last Sunday, Worship Associate Emily Stoper wished us Happy New Year, acknowledging Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, that began on the evening of October 2nd. The High Holy Days ended yesterday with Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. I believe it's healthy for a religious community like this one to take time to search our souls for where we have wronged one another and seek to make amends. It can be healing and life-affirming to take time to reflect on the year that is past and realign ourselves with our highest values, to restore right relationship with ourselves and with each other. And so this morning, I invite you to a communal call to confession. I will read the words to the Litany of Atonement that were written by Rob Eller Isaacs, a former minister of this congregation, and you'll be invited to respond to each stanza with the words on the screen. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Would you please say that one time? We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. I realize that forgiveness cannot and should not be forced. But I ask you to be open to the possibility that participating this morning in the Litany of Atonement may offer a release of some of the pain you carry. Or perhaps you're not ready to let go of the anguish or the anger you've held. If so, touch this softly. Be forgiving of yourself for not being able or willing to let go and move on yet, or perhaps ever. But let this invitation, this call to confession, work gradually in its own way and time, perhaps loosening the hardened places in your heart and making more room for love. So for this litany, you may choose to stay seated, and if so, perhaps you can envision someone who you've harmed or who has harmed you. Or you may choose to stand and find someone to pair up with, and if so, then look into each other's eyes as we go through the litany. So does anyone want to pair up? Too scary? So now together, let us dare to take this exquisite risk of forgiving ourselves and each other and to begin again in love. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference, we forgive ourselves and each other, we begin again in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that we have struck out in anger without just cause, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our greed has binded us to the needs of others, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For the selfishness which sets us apart and alone, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Thank you. So let's take a moment now to just breathe. Breathe in deeply and let it out with a sigh, a noisy sigh. Okay. Well, now one more time. Just breathe in. We begin again in love. So Nancy and I will now offer you a medley of readings from the Soul Matters worship packet on the October theme of deep listening. So we have another litany for you. So after each reading, please join us in saying the words on your screen. Come, let us listen with new ears. So let's try it. Come, let us listen with new ears.
The first reading is called The Practice of Deep Listening by Adam Odell. Sitting out in this cedar swamp, I'm perpetually awestruck by the incidental. I love listening to what may be out there, the rustling leaves as the wind whistles through the trees, the warning calls of a mother duck protecting her ducklings, the crackling fire fading into silence as the final ember is extinguished. There's something strangely calming in accepting that I may never write something as personally moving as the sounds of the world around me, unencumbered by my influence. It gets me wondering what I might hear if I give my home surroundings the same unobtrusive attention. What do I lose when I don't treat the bird in the neighboring apartment in Chicago with the same intentions as the ones hidden among Michigan's cedar trees? What do I miss when I only hear the mistakes in a performance and not the little idiosyncrasies that make it unique? How might I grow when I listen to someone who I don't quite know, confiding in me on a problem I don't quite understand? And we say, come, let us listen with new ears.
The Spirit of Meditation by Jack Kornfield. When you sit in meditation, as soon as you begin, you can sense yourself reconnecting with the body. There's a settling down process that happens. The breath starts to get a little quieter, softer. From here, you can listen in, bringing a simple, respectful attention to the subtle movements of the breath and body. Then you can bring that mindful, loving attention to anywhere it's needed without trying to manipulate or control experience, just letting it be as you listen in carefully. Together we say, come,
Come,
let us listen with new ears.
On Listening That Heals by Thich Nhat Hanh. Deep listening is the kind of listening that can help relieve the suffering of the other person. We can call it compassionate listening. You listen with only one purpose, to help them to empty their heart. And if you remember that you are helping them to suffer less, then even if they say things full of wrong perception, full of bitterness, you are still capable of continuing to listen with compassion. Because you know that listening like that, with compassion, you give them a chance to suffer less. If you want to help them to correct their perception, then you wait for another time. But for this, the time being, you just listen with compassion and help them to suffer less. 1 hour like that can bring transformation and healing. Together.
Thich Nhat Hanh goes on. By listening compassionately to yourself, you have started to come home to yourself. Going home requires only sitting down and being with yourself, accepting the situation as it is. Yes, it might be a mess in there, but we accept it because we know we have left home for a long time. So now we're home. With our in-breath and our out-breath, our mindful breathing, we begin to tidy up our homes. Come, let us listen with new ears. And now we have a hymn, Do You Hear? Would you please rise and sing the 3 verses? I apologize for looking on my phone, but what I would like to do is for our embracing meditation include the people who are here with us today on Zoom. So as you may know, tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples' Day, which is actually both a joy and a sorrow. Indigenous Peoples' Day reimagines what some still think of as Columbus Day. This reimagination started in 1977 at a United Nations-sponsored conference in Geneva, Switzerland, about discrimination against Indigenous peoples in the Americas. It was 14 years later when activists in Berkeley convinced the Berkeley City Council to declare October 12th a day of solidarity with Indigenous people. This reimagining changes a celebration of colonialism into an opportunity to recognize the historical truths about the genocide and oppression of Indigenous peoples in America. Our Unitarian Universalist faith calls us to respect and learn from Indigenous peoples and to support their struggles for social justice and religious freedom. Let us this morning join Unitarian Universalists across the United States in honoring Indigenous Peoples' Day. May we also continue our practice each Sunday morning to weave the web of belonging through the sharing of our personal joys and sorrows. If you have a joy or sorrow you'd like to share with this community, after the bell sounds, I invite you to speak out loud what is in your heart this morning. And for those of you on Zoom, please write your joy or sorrow in the chat, and I will read it. Thinking of Allie, Drika.
My daughter-in-law, Marcy. Bodie. Lisa.
Evelyn Sheridan has a joy that she's glad to be at church connecting on her new laptop. And then our Director of Religious Education, Jeff Melcher, who's been out recovering from surgery. Hey, Jeff. He says, glad to have time for healing and glad to have you with us. Hope you're back soon. For all that has been spoken out loud or written in the chat, and for those things that may be too tender to speak out loud that remain in the silent sanctuaries of your heart, we are grateful that you're here. We are grateful for this community. And together, let's say we hold them in our care. Now, if you'll join me in a spirit of meditation or prayer. Holy One, Spirit of life and love, divine spark in all of creation that glows within each of us, that flows between us, among us, and beyond us, connecting us with all who share life on this sacred earth. We give thanks for this day and for the gift of this time together. May we seek to develop our willingness and skill to listen deeply to one another here in our congregation and beyond, and to that still, quiet voice within each of us. With others, may we dare to share our stories to build bridges of care and understanding. As we listen and share, may we be reminded of what we already know, that none of us is perfect, and that we do not need to think alike to love alike. May this be a covenantal community of seekers bound together by the promises we make with one another, willing to forgive ourselves and each other, willing to begin again and again and again in love. Amen. Now, if you'll remain seated as we sing, Find a Stillness. In the Quaker tradition, people know how to be silent. I don't think that's so true about the Unitarian Universalist tradition. I think we UUs know how to talk better than we know how to listen. Often we're like the chicken in the story about Taylor, whose amazing creation one day came crashing down. With such good intentions, the chicken came wanting to help. Cluck, cluck, what a shame, I'm so sorry, this happened. Let's talk about it. Cluck, cluck, cluck. Does this ring a bell with any of you? Because I know it does with me. And all of the other animals who came with good intentions wanting to help. See if any of these remind you, or maybe you were reminded when I read the story, of a time when you've wanted to help someone who was hurting, or when you were hurting and someone wanted to help you. The bear. I'm angry, let's shout about it. Or the elephant. Let's remember exactly how things were, so we can fix it. Or the hyena, let's laugh about it. The ostrich, let's hide and pretend nothing happened. The kangaroo, let's just throw it all away. And the snake, let's go knock down somebody else's amazing creation. I imagine all of us do listen to people a lot. Don't you listen to people a lot in the course of your daily lives? But often we may not be listening deeply when deep listening is what's called for. At those times, we may think we're listening, but actually, we may be spending a lot of our attention thinking about what we can say that will be comforting or encouraging. Or perhaps as we listen, we're distracted, absorbed in our own thoughts, and not really listening at all. One of the gifts of my long marriage with Francie is finally understanding the reprimand that she used to give me when we were first together. When she would come home upset at something that happened at work, I would offer not only my sympathy, but I had lots of suggestions about what to do. And she would tell me, I don't need you to solve my problem. I just want you to listen. So I'm not perfect, but I'm a lot better than I was 40 years ago. I wonder how many of you are familiar with Parker Palmer. Among his many books is Let Your Life Speak, a little gem. And in it, he invites us to listen to the inner teacher that each of us has, to find our vocation, our place in the world, and to follow its promptings toward a life of meaning and purpose. One of the stories that he shares in the book is about his own life and the people who came wanting to help him when he was in the middle of a deep, deep depression. He writes, some visitors, in an effort to cheer me up, would say, "It's a beautiful day. Why don't you go out and soak up some sunshine and look at the flowers? Surely that'll make you feel better." But that advice only made him more depressed. Intellectually, he knew that the day was beautiful, but he was unable to experience that beauty, unable to feel it in his body. He notes that depression is the ultimate state of disconnection, not just between people, but disconnection between one's mind and feeling. To be reminded by his well-meaning friend of that disconnection only deepened his despair. Other people came to him. "But you're such a good person, Parker. You teach and write so well, and you've helped so many people. Try to remember all the good you've done, and surely you'll feel better." That advice, too, left him more depressed. He wrote that when I heard those words, I thought, one more person has been defrauded, has seen my image rather than my reality. And if people ever saw the real me, they would reject me in a flash. Then there were the visitors who began by saying, "I know exactly how you feel." No, you don't. And this isn't about you. So why is it so difficult just to listen? I think that perhaps it's because we have a hard time believing that it is simply our presence that helps, rather than our thinking and advising. Parker describes that he had one friend named Bill, a Quaker elder, who understood this. After asking Parker for permission, Bill would come to visit him every afternoon at about 4 o'clock. He would sit Parker down in a chair in the living room, take off his shoes and socks, and massage his feet. He hardly ever said anything. From time to time, he would say something brief like, "I can feel your struggle today." Or farther down the road, "I feel that you're a little stronger at this moment, and I'm so glad for that." But beyond that, he would say hardly anything. He would give no advice. Parker did an interview with Krista Tippett, host of the public radio program and podcast On Being. In talking about his depression and how ineffective most of his well-meaning friends were, he told her that somehow Bill found the one place in my body, namely the soles of my feet, where I could experience some sort of connection to another human being. And the act of massaging, just, in a way that I don't really have words for, kept me connected with the human race. Parker's interview is included in Tippett's book, Becoming Wise, an Inquiry into the Mystery and Art of Living. She characterizes herself as a person who listens for a living. She told Parker that she appreciates the language that Rachel Naomi Remen uses with young doctors to describe what they should practice. She calls it generous listening. Generous listening is powered by curiosity, and it involves a kind of vulnerability, a willingness to be surprised, to let go of assumptions. The generous listener listens deeply, wanting to understand the humanity behind the words of another. But don't we know so well that even the most experienced listeners will find themselves slipping into judging and analyzing? When we realize this has happened, can we oh so gently set aside our thinking and open our hearts? Some of you may know that Buddhist meditators often face a similar problem while meditating. And Buddhist teachers speak of treating the mind like a beloved but somewhat appropriate child who wants to show off to guests. "Not now, sweetie," says the kind parent. "You go and play, and we will join you in a bit." I like this idea. If we're listening and notice that we're judging and analyzing what's being said, we can tell our minds, "Not now, sweetie." Or I recall Pema Chodron quoting one of her students who tells his judging, analyzing mind, "Not now, good buddy." So how many of you are having an opportunity to share stories and to practice listening deeply to one another in your covenant groups? Any of you? I'm offering each of the covenant groups the option to use the Soul Matters resource materials for small group ministry as themes for your gatherings. This month, the theme is deep listening. Next month, the theme is repair. And I am so curious how that theme will play out because we know what's happening in November. No matter what happens, I think repair is going to be needed. So as the election draws closer, we're probably more aware than ever of how divided this country is right now. I wonder whether deep listening, what Rachel Naomi Remen calls generous listening, what Thich Nhat Hanh called compassionate listening, can listening to those who we disagree with be a powerful tool to build bridges between our divisions? Can we listen, seeking to understand our common humanity, the suffering, the misunderstandings, the hurt and anger and longing behind the words of the other? So I've been talking about how and how not to listen. I want to end with a story that raises another important question I invite you to think about. What are you listening for? So here's the story. Two friends were walking down the sidewalk of a busy city street during rush hour. It was so noisy. Car horns honking, feet shuffling, people talking and laughing, the siren of a fire truck. In the middle of all this noise, one of the friends turned to the other and said, "I hear a cricket." "No way. How could you hear a cricket with all this noise? You must be imagining it. Besides, I've never seen a cricket in this city." No, really, I do hear a cricket. I'll show you. She stopped for a moment and listened, and then she led her friend across the street to a big cement planter with a tree in it. She pushed back some leaves, and there was a little brown cricket. "That's amazing," said her friend. "You must have superhuman hearing. What's your secret?" "No, my hearing's the same as yours. There's no secret. Watch, let me show you something." She reached into her pocket, pulled out some loose change, and threw it on the sidewalk. Even with all the noise of the city, everyone within 20 feet turned their head to see where the sound of money was coming from. "So see," she said, "it's all a matter of what you're listening for." So I'll leave you with these questions to think about. Is there anything you're really good at hearing? Something that is really important to you? So come, let us listen with new ears. May it be so.
Gee, speaking of generosity and money, there are many ways each of us can help weave the tapestry of love we call community, including our financial contributions and our participation in congregational life. Before I introduce our offertory, here are a few announcements. We didn't do them earlier because we didn't wish for the children to get too restless. So hope you all are hanging in there. For those interested, Reverend Laurel and Maria from our Community Connections team are hosting a welcome circle today during coffee hour. After the service, come on up to the 3rd floor, Crompton Library. You can take the stairs or the elevator. You're welcome to join the gathering to learn more about Unitarian Universalism, our church, and to ask questions about our community. Snacks and childcare will be provided. Our church has 8 gas furnaces to heat our very large building. Each furnace uses methane, which heats the climate 80 times more than carbon dioxide. Replacing these methane furnaces with electric heat pumps will be a big step toward cutting emissions in half in the next years. Yes. And it's expensive. We have the opportunity to apply for a grant that would pay 80% of the cost of 2 heat pumps. The grant deadline is in 1 month. So we need a lot of people with grant-making skills. No, sorry, we just need a few. a person or two with grant-writing skills to help. Many church leaders have a lot on their plate right now. So this would be a great time to step in if you're underemployed in the church. We'll gather at a table in Wente Hall after the service, or if you can't stick around, see Heather McLeod. There she is, waving her hand in the back, on your way out, and she'll get your contact information. And now will the ushers come forward to receive the offering. Remember that we will be donating half of our collection from September through November to the Sogorea Te Land Trust. On the screen, you can see other ways to make your financial contribution besides putting money in the collection basket.
Thank you for your playing. Thank you. Now will you please join me to bless our offering? To the work of the church, which is weaving a tapestry of love we call community, we dedicate ourselves and these our offerings. Thank you. One more hymn, if you'd please rise to sing 2 verses to Wake Now My Senses.
With words from Reverend Darcy Lane. Listen for the beat of holy things, for the shimmer of singing stars, swinging wide in the everything. Answer the pulse of your own life as it invites you to dance. Blessed be.
So face each other, if you please, and if you'd like, you can put your hands on the shoulders of the person in front of you. Look into the eyes of those across the aisle, strangers and friends. I have a beautiful image from Mark Nepo as a benediction. The ear is only a petal that grows from the heart. When we hear each other, it becomes a garden. So let me say one other thing about our welcome circle upstairs. Some of you remember last week a lot of food. We have a lot of food again. So we're inviting newcomers who may be new to the community and have questions about who we are, what membership means, questions about Unitarian Universalism. But even if you're not new, come on up and greet and welcome our newcomers. So let us now give thanks for this day, because this is the day that we have, and it's a doozy. Thank you for coming.